If you run a trade business, you're going to be wearing a lot of hats. You're the tradie, administrator, HR, estimator. But there is one thing you should not be outsourcing, and that is your tax accounting. So, in this episode, I speak with Lynne List from Shine Accounting and Taxation about all the do's and don'ts and how you can use tax to maximize profits within your trade business. Lynne List, Mum, welcome to the Digital Tradie podcast, my first guest on this podcast. And before we get into your backstory, who you are, I just wanted to get a really quick win out of the way for those tradies that are going to go to Smoko. What is the number one thing that you think tradies get wrong when it comes to accounting, taxation, bookkeeping, all under that umbrella? What is the number one thing that you think they get wrong?
Oh, good question. There's a myriad of things that they do get wrong. Not to say that they're totally wrong. It's just it means that it's going to cost them more in the long run when they come to their accountant. Um, Sometimes it's them doing the bookkeeping themselves or their partners, or it might be they don't keep receipts. That's a big one.
No receipts.
They don't keep receipts. These days, if receipts aren't looked after properly, the sun gets to them, they disappear, or they're digital and they don't do anything about collecting that along the way.
So that's it. Number one thing they are doing wrong is receipts.
Receipts.
Okay.
And to some degree, the bookkeeping. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Why don't we just jump into who you are, what it is that you do,
Mhm.
and how you got into all this accounting business?
I run a small accounting practice. I'm a sole trader, although I do have my daughter Megan does some bookkeeping for me as well, and she's a bookkeeper. Uh, and I've been doing this now for myself for 8 years, and I've actually been a tax agent for. I've been doing taxes for 10 years and a tax agent for about 12 years. How I got into it, I've always liked numbers. I started off with the National Australia Bank back when I was 16 years old. Then I went off and became a secretary. Then I became a mum and I was home for 10 years. And then getting back into it, I needed to work. So I took myself off to TAFE and then to university. And then I studied with CPA Australia to become CPA designated. And then you have to do a public practice course. And then you have to become a tax agent. So similar to becoming a licensed tradie in whatever.
So tell me, what is a CPA and why do some accountants have it or don't?
Okay, well, CPA is the member organisation that I belong to. It's Certified Practicing Accountants of Australia. It's been around for over 100 years. Um, you can also get chartered accountants, which are CAs. It's very similar membership organisation. They provide guidance, training, um, and other qualifications for my profession. There are a few others that they would call themselves public accountants. So there's a few other organisations like IPA and NTAA. But personally, I think CPA Australia is the creme de la creme of accounting membership organisations, and I'm very, very proud to be a member. I've just got my 20-year
What do you got there?
pin.
20 years.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Congratulations,
My
Mum. Well
20,
done.
20-year pin.
Tell me, from a tradie's perspective, why is it that they might choose a tax accountant to manage all of their books? And by the way, in my own business, I'm discovering that my mum, as the accountant overseeing, is not the same thing as a bookkeeper. So they are two different things, although, Lynn can do those things. So why is it that they would choose to get a tax accountant to manage all of their taxation or accounting over just a general accountant?
Right. Well, we're two very different species, to be honest. Tax is bound by lots of different tax law. So we've got two income tax acts. We've got the GST, Goods and Services Tax Acts. We've got Fringe Benefits Tax Acts. I could almost say that I'm bordering a lot of law. I know a lot about the law now in that specific side of it. We've also have to know about corporation law, um, and because obviously in my line of work, I will create companies for people and other entities like trusts, etc. So a company accountant or a commercial accountant, they don't need to know about the tax law so much. They will actually hand over the books to a tax agent or a tax accountant at the end of the year,
Oh.
because that's their specialisation.
Kind of like getting a handyman in to build your house. I mean, you might as well just get a qualified carpenter. You
Absolutely.
know, why would you just yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So you need a tax accountant essentially when
Yeah.
you're beginning your business. And that kind of leads me into when is the best time to engage a tax accountant in your whole trade journey?
I certainly think at the start, just to learn about what's going to happen in the future. So, for instance, whether or how do I start my business and what structure do I use? Do I start off as a sole trader? Do I form a company? Do I have a family trust? What are the differences and what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing that? Um, and then also for GST registration and just little tips. So the big thing that I find with regular tradies that are just maybe contracting carpenters, plumbers, electricians is that they still run their business through their personal bank account. So I get the bank feed because I all of my clients must be on some sort of digital software, accounting software, and I've got probably 60% personal, 40% will be business, and they're paying for my time to sift through the personal stuff, and I get to know who and what and where their watering hole is, where how much money they're spending at the TAB. Um, and it can be a
So
bit
the tradies
frustrating.
don't spend their money on gambling, surely not.
Uh, well, maybe not. So there are some other funny stories that they do spend money on, um, and it can be a little bit
Have
embarrassing
you got
for
any
them
funny
when,
ones?
pardon?
Have you got any funny examples of tradies
Oh,
sort of
yeah, of course. I've got this gorgeous young fellow, it's a chippy who I was doing his bank feeds for, and he liked to visit Sexyland. So, you know, he's putting it all out there. He's probably showing me more about his spending habits than what he does for his own mum. So,
maybe he was doing it on purpose, mum?
well, he was doing it on purpose.
No, like making sure you see those books.
I don't think so. I've seen everything. So,
Oh,
you
that's a
know,
classic.
and there's other little visits that people do from time to time. That's pretty obvious where they've gone. So, yeah,
So, talking about the bank account, you
yeah,
said having a separate bank account is important,
yes,
and this is regardless of whether you're a sole trader or a corporation, yeah, a
correct.
proprietary limited.
Yeah,
Can we just break down when is the best time for you to be a sole trader and then potentially transition into a corporation?
yeah,
Or do
sure.
you start with a corporation? What would it be for a tradie?
Oh, look, I would say probably corporations are usually we advise that because we need to asset protect. So if you're still living at home with mum and dad and you're just starting out, the cost of forming a company and maintaining that is a bit more expensive than working as a sole trader.
What
Uh,
how much would it be to maintain a company by itself?
oh, good question. Probably, well, let's say a sole trader, and some of my colleagues will slap me down for this. A sole trader's individual income tax return might cost you anywhere from, say, $280 to $400, $450, depending on how much work's in. That's not including bookkeeping throughout the year or BAS work. That's just a tax return. When you're
Yep.
looking at a company, you're looking at $1,100, $1,200 to do a tax return. And that's because with a corporation, everything has to balance, and you've got a set of financials, you've got your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and then that all has to balance because it's a separate entity. It's like a baby that you've got to make sure everything balances up. In an individual tax return, all the little bits come together that's you. So that isn't just business. It might be bank interest, might be some work income. You don't need to provide profit and loss or balance sheet in an income tax return. So you don't need all that information necessarily, although, some people would say that's a good thing to have.
Okay, so as far as back to the sole trading and corporation, do you recommend just starting out, you would be more than happy for someone to start with a sole trading business
Yep,
and then
absolutely.
transition into a corporation when they grow a bit bigger or they're happy
Correct.
that they're going to be able to sustain being a tradie?
Yes, I would
Yeah.
say definitely. Um, it's just easier. Of course, you still have to register for an ABN. That's an Australian business number. And at that point, when you do register it, you can opt then to register for GST, but you don't necessarily have to until you know that you're going to go over $75,000 a year. And I'm hoping that you do. I do hope that, to get a decent wage these days, you're going to need to get over that, because you've also remembering it. That's a business that you're running. You're going to have to pay for your own car. You're going to have to buy a car or your tradie truck, all your tools, your insurance, um, and if you take on an apprentice, you're going to have to pay work cover and pay their wages and superannuation as well. So therefore, you've got to therefore you've got to take all that into account, and hopefully that you'll, obviously in your first year you want to be, try and get over that 75 to start off with. Yeah,
Yeah. So
and
it's
then
always something you can come back to later on, the GST component.
yes, absolutely. Once you realise you're going to go over 75,000, that's when you can register. The ATO is quite happy for you to trundle along in your first year, see how you go, particularly if you're, just coming out of your apprenticeship and you're just starting to, get your, or finding your feet and finding your customer base and what you're going to do. Because as you know, as my business, with accountants being in all different types of, we're all different types of species, electricians can be all sorts as well as carpenters.
Yeah, we're all
So,
pretty weird electricians.
no, well, they do all sorts of things. So, you can go off in different directions.
So you mentioned things like you're going to need to buy a truck, obviously, tools, all the rest of it.
Hmm.
This leads me into deductions for tradies.
Right.
Now, can you tell me some myths around deductions for service-based businesses or trade businesses? And maybe some things that tradies don't know about that they might be missing out on potentially.
Okay. I guess the controversial one that comes straight to mind for tradies is every now and then it gets brought up is claiming your dog as a tax deduction. That's a
No way. Are you taking the piss? People, really?
But if you have a dog that you take to work on the back of your tray ute, and the dog is sitting up there, obviously has to have its lead on and everything, and it's keeping, it's a security dog to stop people coming and nicking all your tools,
Yeah.
then yes, potentially you can claim your dog. I'm not talking about your dog, David.
No. Are you serious? You can claim your dog as a deduction. Look, so buying it and then what it eats?
What it eats, all the vet bills, but it has to be the type of dog that is going to be a guard dog, right? It's not the sort of dog that you're going to be running around with the kids.
Hang
Sporty
on. What's the, because I know
dog.
tax law can be fairly specific, right? What exactly does it have? A certain breed? Does it need to be crossed with
doesn't
something?
doesn't say.
What, you just need to call it, just what is the legal definition that
Oh,
they
God,
use?
now you're putting me on the spot, Dave. But
Come
it's
on.
one. It does come up on a regular basis on people asking that question. Is it?
So there you go. You heard it here first on the Digital Tradie. You can claim your dog as a deduction if
If
you are taking it to work in the back of your ute.
Yeah, and it is going to deter anyone from nicking your tools.
Get lost. That's amazing. Wow. So obviously that's probably something that I had no idea about. What about some things, deductions that tradies think off the top of their head they're going to be able to deduct, but actually they probably can't?
Oh, they're coffees. Yes,
Oh,
I have this argument. I had this argument with a lady dog walker just recently, and I think she's
was
gone
she
to another
claiming
one
her
for
dog?
luncheon.
Was she claiming her dog as a
No, she wasn't. No, 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 no. She was a dog walker, and she was claiming her and her partner's coffee every morning. Um, so
Okay.
yes, you can't claim that.
But
There's
sorry, so she was claiming it, right? So she was claiming that as a deduction expense
Yeah.
against the business.
Yes,
Uh,
correct.
but you then had to reverse these things, or you spoke to her and
Yes,
said, no, that can't be done. So she
correct.
had to
I had
pay
to
those
reverse.
deductions back.
Basically, no. Well, we hadn't got to the tax return
I
stage at
got
that
you.
point. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of disallowing them when she came to me. That's quite a lot of money when you talk about the whole year, 365 days.
Hmm.
Well, maybe not that much. Maybe 291 days is about the average working days in a year. No, you can't.
So
You can't claim your smoko, even though you spend a lot of money on it.
why? So, well, that leads me into meals.
Yes.
So a lot of tradies I know tend to take some of their clients out for some fairly really, really nice dinners. um, tell me a little bit about what it is that you can and can't do when you're talking about, you're shaking your head at me. What can't you do about claiming meal expenses?
Yeah, basically, you can't claim a meal if you're not traveling overnight because it's personal in nature. Everyone has to eat. Everyone's got to buy their own undies. Um, they've got to not tradies so much, but people going to and from work. They're all personal in nature, and you can't claim that. Um, uh, if you're going away overnight, you can claim the cost of a meal and your
Okay.
breakfast and your lunch if
Hmm.
you're traveling. That's fine, not your alcohol. So
Ooh.
I think tradies themselves, sole traders themselves, taking clients out for dinner, I would say you have to be careful that you're entering into the fringe benefits tax um, area where you're providing a benefit, a non-cash benefit to a client or yourself or your partner or the family. And there's got to be a purpose. It's got to have some nexus to to your income producing activities to be able to claim
What, so if it's a client dinner, that's
it.
a relationship you're building with the client. Is that not, would that not form part of adding to the
You would
business?
need to have a look at it. It depends on where you have it, whether it's in an office, whether it's in a restaurant, whether there's entertainment, whether there's alcohol. There is, I don't have the reference here, but there is references on the ATO website that I could point you in the right direction to see if that's something you can claim. But by and large, if you're having a meal, if it's not a meeting type situation or a training type situation, it's just taken out your mate or you're taking out someone that you're trying to impress. Basically, you've got to be really careful about what you're claiming.
what I'm getting out of this is that all of our meetings that we're having with our clients, our dinners, are now going to be training sessions. Okay, so make sure that we're putting that in your accounting software,
Oh,
which leads me into
the ATO
um,
will kill me
that.
for leading illustrator. Yeah.
Remember, remember, your accountant, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, your accountant is not responsible for signing off on your tax return, your company tax return. As a
Yeah.
director, you are directly responsible for that. They are
Yeah.
only
Correct.
assisting, correct?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can
So,
only give you as much information as that we can impart with you and advise you, and we put it all together. And I've had some strong words with people in the past, but at the end of the day, you guys are signing it off, and you're directly responsible.
so talking about doing bookkeeping, what software are you using? Getting into the software now.
Yep.
What is it that you are using for your clients, and why do you recommend using that type of software?
Okay, so I have clients that use mainly I use QuickBooks because that's what I use. So Intuit QuickBooks. But I also have clients using Xero, where that's very popular. A lot of accounting firms use Xero and recommend Xero. There's still some clients using MyOb. It's still widely used, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't recommend MyOb for the tradies to start off with. It's a bit more expensive than QuickBooks and Xero. Then there's a few others out there on the market that every now and then a client will come to me and say, I'm using this. And some of them are okay, but I just don't think in our Australian environment. So some of these are coming in from overseas, for example, or some that are just trying to get a foothold into the marketplace. I think even though QuickBooks isn't primarily Aussie, um, you'll find that their support is excellent. So great, great training videos, great support. Talk to someone here in Australia. I believe Xero is very similar, and MyUp does have the support notes as well. So any of those, it's very cheap to start off with, um, and you can connect your bank feeds to it. So in other words, you go in and give permission to Intuit or Xero or MyOb to connect to your bank, and then because you've got that one bank account that is a transaction account, and just having said that, you'll find that some of the banks will recommend, and I recommend too, that you have two bank accounts. So one for your everyday transactions and one for your GST. So on your
Oh,
tax.
separate the two. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
when your money comes in, you immediately put. I recommend 30% to start off with, so that covers GST and your tax, um, and at least
that's
you've
of
got
all
a bit of a
revenue coming
buffer.
into the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just separate.
Correct.
So you separate every bit of money that comes into your transaction account, and just 30% of that straight into a separate account.
Yeah.
Don't touch
Look,
it.
it does depend on if you've got a if you've say you look at it on a weekly basis and
Hmm.
say you've got in $5,000, but you know you've actually just gone and bought a whole lot of tool sets, got your Milwaukee set, and
Hmm.
it's cost you about $2,500 or whatever. Take that off. Just do a quick rough. 5,000 minus 2.5. That's 2,500, and then just take a third of that because you've already got. You've got a deduction there. So
Already
it's
correct.
just a
Yes.
rough thing. If you need to dip into it, do so. But so many times people come to me with their GST accounts and they're still sitting on the $6 that was there the year before because they haven't used it. And then they're struggling to pay their tax bill, their pay as you go installments, which will happen for tradies that pass that first year, and their GST.
On the technology itself, I use QuickBooks myself. And although I'm a marketing agency, a digital marketing agency, I'm essentially a service based business. So I've got receipts, expenses. One of the biggest things that I love about QuickBooks, and I'm not saying that it is any better than Xero. Obviously, these are the two big dogs of the industry. But I love this snap the receipt feature, and it immediately picks up on all of the expenses. So I use it for, fuel or whatever for the car when I'm driving around. It's just awesome. So for you as an accountant, what is it that you like about the QuickBooks software?
I think it's because the interface is so easy to use, and it for me it just looks more attractive than a few of the other ones. So, I mean, I've worked equally in quite a few different accounting software. I mean, including big CRM type ones for the big manufacturing firms, but for someone just starting out and learning about accounting, as I said, you want to keep it simple. You don't want it to take over what your primary role is, which is providing a service in your designated profession. However, you do have to have something in the background that's recording what you're doing for tax, for decision making, to decide whether you can afford to buy that new ute you've been looking at. They've just finally rolled off the um, the import containers. They've finally arrived, and you're pretty excited. It's going to cost $50,000. You're going to have a decent set of books to take to your financer, your whoever it is that's going to lend you some money to do that, so in order to be able to get a decent deal. So it's really important to understand at the end of the day, the end of the week, at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, how you're going. Are you making
Mm.
profit? Do I continue? What things should I change? Uh, am I spending too much money buying a certain type of tool because it's breaking down every 5 minutes? Or, oh gosh, I'm spending far too much money doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm.
So,
It's
or that,
essentially a decision-making tool for your business. If you're making money or you're not, and
yeah,
what can you do with it? Can you
correct.
can you grow and expand? Which is what we want all tradie businesses to do, is to be able to grow to a point that they want for their
Yeah,
lifestyle.
yeah,
So tell me, I mean, it sounds like there is no way that you could ever run a business without a software these days like this. I
yeah.
mean, something like this is deductible as well, isn't it? It's an expense, so you should really be thinking about engaging with your accountant first, and then getting on board with an accounting software pretty much
Yeah.
at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of an initial meeting. I normally would have an initial meeting with a client that comes in, and I'll run through the costs of the administrative side of the business. I mean, you know what you're going to be charging, and how much you sort of want to get out of a day's work, but then you've got these costs on top of it.
Just tell me. Let's just say that you've come out of your apprenticeship, or you've been a qualified tradie for some time, and you're thinking about starting your business, and that the best thing to do is engage an accountant, but you really don't have a lot of money, and you're a bit scared. If you call someone up, you're like, well, I don't know if they're going to charge me a heap of
Yeah,
money and then for me to get nothing out of it.
yeah.
Do most tax accountants just will give advice for free, or how does this kind of work?
Look, I personally believe that they should do that first initial meeting as a free
Mhm.
meeting. I'm not sure if all of them do that. I
Okay.
certainly do, because it is a partnership, and you have to know whether you like the client and the client will work with you as well.
Mm.
So initially, I mean, it's only an hour's discussion just to find out what they should be doing to start them off, and that's when you can work out how much a client is worth, as in how much I'll need to tell them how much the charges are, and all that sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah, so similar to a tradie going and doing a free quote,
mm,
there's a similar thing for an accountant.
absolutely. Yeah.
You're prospecting essentially for
Correct.
a client to come in,
Yeah.
and you're giving him advice
Yeah.
on their situation.
Yeah.
The
And
best way to go about it.
And as public accountants, we've got a certain level of of ethical standards, and we can say to a client, "Look, I'm sorry, we can't help you. if that client is going to be a bit of a dodgy. So if Tony Mockbell was to come into my office and say, "What can you do for me?" I'm certainly within my rights, and I should say, "Look, I'm sorry, I can't help you at this point. I'm a bit busy. I can't look after you." So yeah, it's a bit of a yeah, exactly, and it's the same for you. If you were to go out to do a job, and you know damn well that's beyond your expertise, you really should be saying, "Look, I'm sorry, I can't do this job. Uh, I can recommend somebody else to you. Or go back to the yellow pages and let your fingers do the walking."
Just good ethics, really. You should have some good ethics in business.
Absolutely, yeah.
That leads me into a new segment that I started, which I know we've touched on technology already, but this is Tech Tool of the Week. So I'm going to ask you, Mum. You can't say QuickBooks, okay? I know that's what
Okay,
you want to say, all right?
okay.
But what is something, a tech tool that you use all the time that you would recommend to the tradie audience, the digital tradie audience?
Oh, Dave, put me on the spot.
You are on a computer every day, Mum. Come on. You must have something that you use all the time.
Well, my Excel as an accountant is my Excel. So
Excel, okay, that's a good one.
everything I do is on Excel, but I'm not out in the field, so I'm not a tradie out there, but yeah, I don't think I could work without Excel these days. It's
and
just an essential part of my extension of my work. Yeah.
And do you think tradies should use Excel over a
Writing it
software
down.
like QuickBooks or writing it down?
Yeah, look, these days, yeah, absolutely. If you're doing a quote, you really should be doing it on something like you can. I know there's I think you've actually been looking at different programs where you can work out a quotation, but you should be using something like Excel to be able to make sure that your calculations are correct. Can I tell you about something your father did
Yeah.
in
Oh,
his?
by the way, my dad is a chippy, and for a significant amount of time, Mum was married to him. Not anymore. So she well and truly knows
Yes,
how tradies operate.
yes. So we're doing a dual occupancy in Baronia back in the 90s, and he was building the back property himself, and he made a mistake in calculating how much pink bats he would need. And
Yeah.
instead of just calculating the outside, he also included the internal walls cavities as well. I've come home with you kids, and he's got all the pink bats lined up all along the side of the driveway.
I reckon I
And
remember this. We
oh,
used
well,
to
I've got
play
pictures
on
of
them.
you
They were
guys
great.
climbing up on these pink bats,
Yes.
and it cost twice as much money. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, I can't remember, they didn't go back. And he made some excuse about, oh, it'll be good soundproofing between our bedrooms.
Did
And
he end up using them?
no, I ended up
Oh.
selling them after the divorce. So I had them up in the roof, and your old TAFE teacher, Mike, came and helped me get them down from the roof, and then I sold them to someone for a couple of $100. So yeah,
A shout out to Mike, by the way,
yes,
who I terrorized as a kid for dating my mum. And then became my TAFE teacher later on. A story for another time. By the way, Mike,
please,
if you ever listen to this, I'd
enough.
love to have you on as a guest on the podcast. We could talk all things Lynne List.
Yeah, that you can
I
cut out.
That's definitely staying in. All right, thank you. That's going to wrap that up, I think. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Lynne from Shine Accounting
yeah.
and Taxation. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I'd just like to put in a disclaimer here. Don't take any of the advice that I've given you on this podcast. Um, Everyone's different. Come and have a chat to myself, or definitely go and talk to your accountant if there's a family accountant or someone. Just beware that there are some accountants out there that that aren't tax agents. So the guy next door who says I'm an accountant, he may not necessarily be a tax expert. So you need to see a tax agent that's registered. Key.
But hopefully with a CPA. Sounds like they are the top dogs. The CPA there. That's
CPA.
exactly.
Yeah, no
All
worries.
right. Thank you so much,
You're very welcome.
Lynne, Mum, for
Lots of
being the
fun.
very, very first guest on the Digital Tradie podcast. Righto, that wraps it up. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this with your mum. I'm Dave List, and this has been the Digital Tradie podcast. Until next time, make sure you're creating some legendary content.